Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my Game of Thrones Legends mobile game content. So today we have had a avalanche of information hit us. And that's the right word to use for today because where I'm at it's snowing like crazy. And I'm actually home from work today. I should be at work right now, but the roads are so bad I can't go anywhere. So good for me. Finally, my luck is hit and I'm actually home whenever they make some big announcements. So we got some big announcements to talk about, folks. We've got a new dev diary, which goes into the details of the Battle Foundation, the Ice, and the Greyjoys, some major changes they're making to some of those heroes. So that's going to be its own thing because, oh my god, there's a lot there. May have to be its own thing broke up into 2 or 3 different parts because there's just so much information there. We're going to have to cover that on its own. But the first thing I want to cover is the release of some patch notes that hit today as well. It's version 1.0.293 and it will be coming to the game soon, and it's going over a lot of the changes that have happened as of this patch. It hasn't hit yet, but it will hit soon, so it said be sure to be watching for it in your app store coming soon. So let's go ahead and go into this and let's talk about these patch notes from this release that was dated today, because this, oh my gosh, this is a big one, folks. This is going to take us a minute to get through it. So grab you a sandwich, grab you a Coke, sit down, relax, and let's talk because this is going to take a minute. So let's get into it. So the new things they've added are the option to recover your account on reinstall or when switching devices. Me personally, I never had an issue switching devices because my account is tied to an email. So if I had to switch accounts, I could do that. Now this is just referring to switching devices though. So I'm not really sure what that applies to, but hopefully that will stop the pain that a lot of people have when they delete the game and try to reinstall to see if they can fix an issue they're having, and then they lose access to their account. That really sucks. I've seen that happen to a couple of different people I know in the community so far, and I hope that fixes it. The next one is probably the biggest thing in this whole patch notes right here, and it's on line number 2. A new event with new champions is coming on March 6th. Stay tuned for more details. Now, me and my buddy, the Digital Gandalf, that digs around in all the game files and uncovers the sweet, sweet, tasty goodness, have been talking amongst ourselves, and we think we know what it is that they're going to add, but I don't want to say anything else on that right now because that has not been released, so I don't want to spoil that for them. But the fact that it says new champions is coming on March 6th, that is a good indication of, if you've been paying attention to my videos that I've made in the last month and a half or so, it's a good indication of what we think is coming and what the new event will be centered around. And it kind of lends some credence to some of the changes that they're putting into place with this release of this patch notes and this dev diary, because I think all that ties in together. But I don't want to go into any more detail on that right now because we're not 100% sure, so I don't want to say too much about that right now. Smarter enemies in all game modes on point number 3 here, including Raid's defensive team. Hey, that sounds cool. A lot of times my raid defense team loses battles I feel like it should have won, and this could possibly play into making the raids battles more engaging if the defense team acts a little better, a little smarter. Enemies now have priority order, which is considered when multiple enemies have their skills ready. So This, I think, applies to a situation of kind of like a Rhaenyra and a Daenerys type thing. Rhaenyra buffs Daenerys by adding fire stacks to the enemy, and then Daenerys comes in and burns them all for extra damage when they have the fire stack on them. So I think that is kind of what they're talking about when they say buffing abilities come first, followed by damage dealers. I think that's the perfect example of that situation in action right there with that Rhaenyra-Dany combo. Stamina granting abilities fire last. So if you have someone that grants extra stamina, it looks like they're going to now be pushed down into the turn order to allow the buffing and the damage to happen first and then that. So that could, have a defense team act a lot smarter in the battle if they did things more like what a player would normally do. So yeah, having the defense team be smarter, it sounds like a win, because that should help your raid defense play a little better when you're not controlling it, and it also may make the battles a little more engaging when you're actually the one fighting as well. So it could work on both sides of the coin there. Champions sharing the same name. Now this is huge. This is huge. I mean, this is something that people have been saying ever since the game released as to, why can't I have more than one Jon Snow in my party? Why can't I have more than one Daenerys in my party? Type of thing. And here you go. This is something that I never thought they would do, honestly, because I kind of thought it was smarter to only allow one instance of a character in your party at once. But this opens the door to a lot of theory crafting as far as, what do you do with 3 Jon Snows? How are they going to interact with each other? Can they interact with each other? Champions sharing the same name can now be used on a team together. For example, you can now have 3 Jon Snows, King of the North, Battle of Bastards, and Battle of Bastard of Winterfell on your team. You can also use multiple Arya Starks, Alicent Hightowers, Criston Cole, Daenerys Targaryens on your teams as well. This will also be true for future champions. So catch this little line right here. This will also be true for future champions. So what that means is that they know that they're going to be releasing some older versions of certain characters. Could we possibly apply this sentence that it will apply to future champions to a Rhaenyra possibly? Could there possibly be a younger version, which is the one we have now, and the older version in Season 2 from House of the Dragon? And can they play together on the same team? That could apply to that. What if there was another version of Daenerys coming soon? Like a Daenerys version 3, maybe? Possibly. Could that apply? If you have the Khaleesi, and then the one we have now, and then a new version possibly in the same team, that might be interesting as well. So this is something that I can't believe actually that they're adding, and I never thought that they would, but hey, it's cool because it lends to a lot more deck building options when you do something like this, because now instead of just having one Jon Snow and looking for the interaction that you can have with that one character's skills, now what do you do? I mean, the options are, compounded quite a bit now. So that's really interesting. So now let's look at some of the game system changes that they're putting in play here. The dev diary goes into a lot more detail with a lot of this stuff, but we're just going to kind of take the 1,000-mile view of it right here and then get into detail a little bit more with the dev diary later on down the road. So in the game systems changes, they're talking about the addition of resistance caps, minimums and maximums So no champion can achieve complete damage immunity or infinite damage. So complete damage immunity or infinite damage, I don't really know what that's referring to, because I've never had a situation where I had complete damage immunity or the ability to do infinite damage. So I'm not really sure what that's about. Maybe there was something that was broken that we just didn't know about. I don't know. Or maybe there was and people just didn't share and it never got out into the community too much. But I'm not really sure what that applies to, but it'd be interesting to try to figure that out. They adjusted the damage calculation to ensure that the damage reduction formula always weighs attack versus defense, instead of the scaling values of abilities versus defense. So now it's going to be a calculation of, I have this much attack, I hit you, you have this much defense, you mitigate so much of it and take so much damage, instead of the scaling values of abilities versus defense. And I'm not, I don't know how that's going to play out. That's going to be interesting to see the damage differences. We can't really parse the damage out when we're doing things in the game because there's no log to look at. So basically you just see these battles enough to where you kind of get an average damage amount in your head as far as what your Danny does or what your whoever does, and you try to kind of figure out whether they're doing more or less based on that. But it's going to be really hard for us to say concretely what the difference is, whether it's 100 more, 100 less. You know what I'm saying. It's going to be really difficult to tell the difference, but you should be able to tell by feel. If your characters are slaying your enemies a lot quicker, it could be due to the enemies taking more damage or the fact that you're doing more. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting to try to see. In the tuning department, they're going to be making some major adjustments to some of the fundamental mechanics of battle, the ice, brittle, and raid status effects, and adjusting champion skills and abilities to accommodate for these changes. So this one caught me off guard, I'm not going to lie. From where I'm at, playing the game right now, it seems like the new green characters are what's kind of breaking the game, but yet they go towards ice, brittle, and raid. I don't know what to say about that. I immediately, when I read this, I was like, oh great. So instead of fixing what I saw to be the problem, now they're going towards something that never really was the problem in my mind. But then someone in my house, one of my members, Foamy Beers, he said, hey, I don't know if I really agree with that. He said, I don't think the greens are broken. He said, I just think that the other factions may not have ever been optimal. So it makes the greens look really bad because the greens are designed really well. That's a good argument, and I don't know really what side of the fence I fall on that one, because I immediately just thought that it was the greens that broke the game because they're trying to sell and make money on the new shiny. But he has a valid point. The ice mechanic and some of the other mechanics like raid and bleed and things like that never really became a thing because they just weren't that great. So maybe it's the fact that the other teams just weren't designed as well as the green birthright teams. I don't know. That's a good argument to have, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion on that in the official Discord and on my Discord as well. We're already tearing apart this information and talking about it. But for a more in-depth look at that, we'll have to go to the developer diary and kind of go through those discussions. We've made minor adjustments on how we communicate stat upgrades in our patch notes for better clarity. You'll now see upgraded values communicated within parentheses. Example, 50% in parentheses 150% means the base value is 50% and the maximum upgraded value is 150%. I guess whenever you level your character all the way up type of thing. and get their skills all the way to level 10 or whatever is the top. The renew keyword is now a very viable way to heal and has been added to several champions. Healing per turn, 0.05% max hit points has been adjusted to be raised to 1% maximum hit points. So they've buffed the renew ability. Instead of healing 0.5% or whatever that is, now it does a 1% of the max hit points of the character. So that's going to be interesting to see how much better that turn-by-turn renew healing is now. That'll be quite cool to see. And that may put some more viability into characters like Marjorie, Caitlyn, those type of things, and Alicent, the healing version. Because they have been characters that heal but never really been utilized to the fullest effect because the heal just wasn't that great. So maybe that's making healing great again. I don't know. The raid mechanic has been adjusted to support the Greyjoy combo playstyle. Raid will now heal substantially more and increase your team's defense by reducing the enemy's physical resistance. So when you're raiding them, you're basically taking away their strength and you're allowing your team to do more damage. So healing has been buffed to 1.5% from 0.5%. The tenacity debuff has been removed, and the debuff duration was infinite. Now it's just 2 turns. So big changes there for the raid mechanic. That may be something that causes players to really consider playing those Greyjoys a little more. That's one that kind of got overlooked throughout the past. I've always done videos and I've talked about the summons that were up and should you even pull for this one or not, and I've just always thumbs down on the Greyjoy one. Maybe that'll make them a little better. I don't know. The scouted keyword will now take into account the effect of unique gems. So for example, a scouted enemy will be marked by Arya's list when struck with Arya's gem, even if it wasn't in the match gem's lane. So that is something that I've been crying about since the start of the game. I wanted to use Arya in my Stark team at the first few weeks of the game. I had her and I immediately slotted her in because I thought she would make an amazing component, and then whenever I saw how her Arya's list gem worked, I was just like, not a fan, because it was too random, too hard to make work, couldn't be relied upon to do what you needed it to do, and it took too much work to make it go off like you needed it to. And there was so many other better characters that were less work to make do some damage, and they slotted in so much easier than Purple Arya did. So that's been changed, and I can't wait to try that to see if it's any better now, because now maybe there's a lot of people that will be happy about that, because I know there's been a lot of people that's wanted to use her for a long time, and we just is like, there's better out there. The ice mechanic is definitely a big thing. The ice and the brittle. This is where the wheelbarrow was dumped, right here on the ice and brittle mechanic. This is where they really dug in and went to work on a mechanic specifically, and it's the ice and the brittle mechanic. There are an in-depth, 50-page long description in the dev diary for explanations of the changes that they've made to ice and brittle. So we'll definitely go over those a lot more in detail in another video. But for right now, let's just go over the high points. Stamina slow per ice has went from 8% to 5%. So now you'll notice that you'll gain more stamina when you're under the effect of ice than you did before, because that that was brutal. And that was one of the things that made that Stark brittle ice team so powerful, was the fact that they could keep you from being able to load up your skills with the stamina slowdown ability, while they pulverized you with the extra damage that the brittle did. So that was one of the things that made them so crazy powerful, and would sneak up on you and take you down before you realize what was happening, especially in raids and stuff. Before you knew it, that team had you beat, and you're just like, whoa, what's going on here? So when the stamina slow from 8% to 5% is now going to be a noticeable difference, I think you'll see that you will charge your abilities up a lot faster than you did before when you were under the effects of that, based on the faction percentage that, of how many Starks in the team that you're facing. This right here is new. This has become a big change on how brittle works. Each stack of ice now increases the bonus damage of brittle by 20%. Instead of how it was before, now it's per stack. So per stack by 20%. So I don't know if that means that you can now stack more than 5. I'm not sure. But I think 5 was the maximum, if I remember correctly. And if I'm wrong, be sure and let me know in the comments, where it was, because I'm pretty sure it was 5, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that whenever you got to 5, you had brittle, and I think that was the maximum that it could stack, but now maybe that's changed. They have changed the bug that was going on with healing getting amplified while you were under brittle, and that was not an intended effect. And I know that there was quite a few people that was wanting to kind of capitalize on that and build teams around it, but it looks like that is now a thing of the past. Brittle no longer amplifies healing or revive. Damage no longer amplifies damage dealt from gems or effects such as fire and bleed. So brittle no longer amplifies damage dealt from gems or effects such as fire and bleed. So I don't know how that plays out, honestly. It's weird to talk about fire and ice in the same sentence when you're talking about one buffing the other, but maybe that was a thing that I just didn't understand was going on. I know that there was a lot of discussion in the Discord about how brittle was being applied in regards to healing and in regards to weird damage that was going on that people couldn't quite put their finger on, but I think maybe that's what that deals with. The bonus damage reduced from 300% to 200%, now increased by each stack of ice. So instead of getting brittle, then you get your bonus damage. Now it's per stack all the way up to brittle. So that's a different change, and maybe that will cause these teams to do a little bit more damage all the way up the chain, all the way up the ladder until they get to brittle. I don't know. That's going to be interesting to kind of try and see. Now they're saying that brittle is uncleansable, so I get like God's Wood Defender or something, maybe they can't remove those status effects anymore once brittle is applied. Maybe ice can still be removed, but once brittle is locked in, it can no longer be removed, I think is what they're saying. So if you have 3-4 stacks of ice on a character, I think some of those skills will still allow you to remove those stacks. But once you get to the point that you have brittle applied, I think it's locked in and can no longer be removed, is what that means. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where they're going with that. Sisters reunited, the ally gem, Arya and Sansa, now applies Arya's list to the enemies it strikes. See, that was a thing before, it never did do that, and that was one of the reasons why their pairing was not optimal, really, because their ally gem didn't do a whole awful lot. So now that it applies Arya's list to the enemies it strikes, that could be a lot better now. So it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these changes play out. So we're talking about the Starks now, and Arya Stark, the Lost Stark, has always been a survivor, but her abilities sometimes felt too reliant on others. Now she stands stronger on her own, as she should. She can now apply ice, meaning she triggers her own passive, no longer needing specific allies to do it for her. Her buffs no longer expire, ensuring that she remains a reliable force throughout the battle. Her bonus damage now scales with attack instead of depose, making her strikes more consistent and deadly. Her strikes were surprisingly strong already, so I can just imagine how much better she's going to be. This is going to be a situation of, she was an epic character that was surprisingly good and could fill a hole that, a lot of early game teams may have had when they didn't have anybody to stick in that slot. Let's say they didn't have Caitlyn, or they didn't have another good reliable green that they could slot in there and still keep that Stark synergy. Arya was always a really good one. The green Arya was always a really good one to throw in there. So she now becomes a lot stronger option, and that makes her a little more scary. She can hit you pretty hard, and if you're not paying attention, she can do a lot of damage to you. Hit your key hero and just about take him out how she was before. Now she's going to be even stronger, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Kind of like the red Jon Snow, how he is such a good epic hero. I think Arya's epic classification has now gotten a lot better, so she's going to be one to watch for sure. The Winterfell returned version of Arya, the purple Arya, with the changes to Scout, overstacking, and her ally gem was Sansa. Arya's return is more dangerous for her enemies than ever before. Her gems are now far more effective, ensuring she strikes when it matters most. Arya's list will now mark enemies much more reliably, meaning those who have wronged her will not escape their fate. So her damage has been 12% to 30%. It's went up quite a bit. Bonus damage has went up from 12% to 30%, and then fully maxed at 50 is what they had told us earlier, that the number in parentheses is the fully maxed version. So you can see the damage from a flat 12% scales up now. Bonus damage 69% to 85 at a max has went up to 175 and 250%. Wow. That's a big increase in damage right there for her bonus damage. That's probably her Arya's list damage. Wow. That's a big increase in damage. That's going to make her a lot more attractive to play tune and see how she performs. Her gem spawn went from 1 to 4 at a maximum to a straight 3 all the way across the board, so that'll be much more effective earlier and then kind of remain its consistency instead of maxing out at a insane amount of 4. Passive damage was 25% to 50, has now kind of went down just a little bit to 20 to 40, and that's kind of in balancing her overall damage. Her passive ability damage kind of went down a little bit to kind of offset that, I think. Caitlyn Stark has always been the guiding hand of House Stark, and now her presence on the battlefield truly embodies her role as a family's protector and healer. She now wields Renew, granting her sustained healing to help keep her allies standing through even the longest battle. Her leader ability has been refined, making her the undisputed healing anchor of the Stark faction. Well, I mean, of course, she's kind of like the only healing anchor of the Stark faction, so she's definitely undisputed now. I think Ghost is the only other one that does any healing really to speak of. Ned does a little bit of healing, but yeah, she's definitely the undisputed healer. Her self-sacrificing passive is now balanced with better mitigation, ensuring that she can protect her own as fiercely as she once protected her children. So her healing skill has went up from 63% at the start and 113% max to 75% and 125% max. The defense buff has also went up at the start, stayed the same consistently at the maximum level, and her effect applies 1 renew to the target. So renew is going to be an interesting thing that we're going to have to check out and see how it works a lot better now. It's been added to her kit, so she's definitely more of a serious healer now than she was before. Her passive, sacrifice hit points to heal ally, has been buffed from 10 to 20%. That's a big difference. Ice, she does 2 versus 1 AoE has been changed to 1. So she no longer applies as much ice, and I guess that's the trade-off. You do less ice, but you do better heals. Ice AoE is 25% chance to apply 1 ice to all. The new leadership ability. When an enemy is affected with ice, the ally responsible and Caitlyn are healed for 5% attack. So when an enemy is affected with ice, the person that put the ice debuff on the enemy and Caitlyn are healed for 5% of her attack. So she has a pretty high attack, so that could be quite a big heal. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, let's talk about Ghost. Ghost, the big dog. Ghost now strikes a big wolf, sorry. Ghost now strikes with deadlier precision, forcing his enemies to live in fear of the hunt. The predator's gaze, that sounds like a new skill, ensures his bite is now as fierce as his bark, marking enemies for a swift and brutal end. Healing has been moved to his passive, meaning that every strike is a choice. Do you wound the strongest to heal, or do you finish off a target to gain stealth? So yeah, that's a big change. His damage has been buffed quite a bit on his skill, from 32% at the start and 52% at a max to 75% at the start and 150% at the max. That's a big deal. That's a big change. So his damage is going to go up. He already hits pretty hard as it is. Bonus damage is 154% at the start, and now it's 75% at the start and 150% at max. Stealth duration has went up from 2 turns to 3 turns, so that means you'll be able to stay stealth just a little bit longer. And no longer, his new effect no longer heals him on takedown. Ghost now recovers 15% to 25% at a maximum stamina on takedown. So whenever he takes someone out, he now gains stamina instead of a heal, because his heal got moved to his other abilities. His passive no longer reduces the strongest enemy's attack with a 20% chance to apply 1 ice. Ghost now marks the strongest enemy with Predator's Gaze. Now heals 10%, 15% of his at a max attack when striking an enemy with Predator's Gaze. Predator's Gaze, this is what Predator's Gaze does. Reduces the target's attack, dodge, and tenacity by 10%. So, an attack down 10%, dodge I never really saw be a factor in anything. So the attack going down by 10%, it's okay, but I would kind of rather have seen Predator's Gaze do something else, but that's okay. We'll try these changes and see how they work. Then we get into the Jon Snows, and we start to talk about the red Jon Snow first, the bastard of Winterfell. Jon's strength has always come from his resilience, his allies, and the frozen fury of the North. With these changes, he is now the perfect warrior for those who fight under the Stark banner, and less of an easy pick for just any team. His ice stacking is now tied to his skill, meaning you must time your attacks wisely to cash in on the chilling power he wields. Northern Gift builds when allies crit or apply ice, reinforcing his synergy with Stark teams. When enemies become brittle, Jon unleashes devastating bonus damage and spreads even more ice across the battlefield. So he still does his critical chance buff and his critical damage buff. That's been raised from 15% at the start to 30% overall. So that's an increase in power right there. The buff duration goes down a turn though, so it lasts less amount of time. And his damage buff was 104 to 129%. Now it's 100% at the start and 200 at the fully maxed out version. So he's a tough one to really get some stars on because he's part of that red pull and he has such a low percent that not a lot of people have the ability to have a lot of stars on him. I think right now about the average for him for serious players is about 4 or 5 stars. There's not really been a chance to really pull for him because he doesn't really have his own special summon other than that red one, and he's in there with so many other heroes that makes it a little difficult to get a lot of him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens after people play a lot longer, a few more months, 5, 6, 7 more months, and they start to get a little bit more stars on him to see how that actually shakes out in real world usage. When an ally lands a critical strike or ice to an enemy, Jon grants 1 Northern Gift. When he uses his skill, he deals 20% or 35% at a max attack bonus damage for each Northern Gift he has. If they are brittle, he then applies 1 ice to the target for each Northern Gift. Jon loses all Northern Gift upon using his skill, so that's going to be interesting to see how that builds when allies crit or apply ice. That's going to be really interesting to see how much that can cause their damage to increase. So yeah, that's going to be one to watch because he's already really seriously good, way more good than I realized. I slept on him, and he's really paying off now in dragon teams and a lot of other areas. Jon Snow, the Battle of the Bastards version. This is one that I haven't really used an awful lot because I just don't have a lot of him, so I really don't know a whole awful lot about him. He has been one of the strongest Stark damage dealers, but his greatest limitation was that he couldn't fight alongside his own past selves, the best ice appliers in the game. Now that he can, we've refined his role as a tenacious warrior who thrives in the chaos of battle. His finishing power has been slightly reduced to balance the ability to field multiple versions of Jon Snow together. So now if you combine his power with their ice applying abilities, that's why they had to, kind of nerf his power just a little bit, because that would be ridiculous. His passive now grants a stamina boost, ensuring that he has the strength to keep fighting and strike back harder when his allies fall. He still applies ice when allies perish, but this has never been his defining strength, which will continue to be his swift vengeance. So his damage skill got a little bit of a reduction in power. It looks like his damage went down quite a bit, from 50% at the start to 104% attack at max, down to 25% at the start and 50% at max. His bonus damage was buffed at the start, but overall looks like it was taken down just a little bit, from 107 to 70% at the max. Right here are these two. You can see his starting bonus damage is more at the start though, so that makes him feel better at the start, but then he kind of, that bonus damage kind of runs out of gas down the road. His passive, 1 ice and 3 at a maximum, has been changed to 1 and then 2 at a maximum. So that's kind of a nerf there. AoE ice chance, 25%. And this is new. Jon gains, this is only for this Jon, the Battle of the Bastards Jon, gains 25% stamina when an ally is defeated. So when an ally is defeated, he gets 25% stamina, which is quite a bit. But I mean, you only have 5 people in the enemy team at any one time, so you know, does that really make a big difference by the time he's already dead? I don't know. We'll have to see. If you can keep him alive longer, then obviously that stamina gain gains its potency as 3, 4 are downed, but by that time has the enemy team already killed you? I don't know. We're just going to have to see how that works out. Green teams are quite capable of putting you down quickly, so they may put you down before this actually is realized. His leader ability, attack debuff, went from 10 to 15%, so that's a little bit of a buff. And then now we get to the blue Jon, King in the North. This is the one that pairs with Ghost and always makes such a good combo in new players' legendary assault dragon teams. At the start, this can get you off the ground with your legendary assault team, but as you get up into the higher levels, like the 9 skull version, the 10 skull version where we're at now, max level content, you'll quickly understand that ice team gets outpaced real fast, and you have to start looking for ways to increase the damage on those dragons in different manners. So that's kind of one that is good at the start but then gets replaced down the road. He's always been one of the greatest wielders of ice. Yeah, that's debatable. I mean, yes, he does apply a lot of stacks of ice, and he has the ability to get you to brittle if you can get any blue gems to match. A lot of times I've seen it in my boards that I just don't get any blue. Blue is one of the things that gives me fits, and now that was killing me trying to get my legendary assault team off the ground because I never could get any blue at the start to get the brittle activated. It took too many turns. It took like 3 and sometimes 4 turns to get him charged up to be able to try to apply that brittle. Once he got it on, it was great, but just getting there was just too slow. His stamina speed, slow, very slow. Oh man, that's gonna make him pitiful right there. I mean, he was already so slow, and now he's going to be very slow. I don't know. I don't know about that. This right here may just be the nail in the coffin for him. That causes a lot of people not to use him. So I don't know about that one. I'm always hesitant to see this kind of a nerf because those are brutal. Whenever you cause the enemy not to charge up as fast as they did before, you're basically signing the death warrant for that character, because if they can't get their skills off, they can't realize their potential in the battle, because all their major damage and major abilities are tied to their charging up of their main hero skill. So when you slow that down, man, that really kills a player. If it was ever sped up, that would be great. That would be a huge buff for any character, but slowing them down like that, from slow to very slow, man, he's probably not ever going to be in my party again just because of this. I'm telling you, it was already brutal enough. So I think that was kind of I don't know if I go along with that choice. His new passive, when an enemy is afflicted with ice, Jon gains 5% stamina, and the target enemy loses 5% stamina. So he gains a little bit more whenever he flicks someone with ice, but is it enough to offset this? I don't think so. I don't think it it is. I think he's now so slow that nothing you can do will help him get out of that hole. As a leader, he revives with 10%, and he has now been buffed to revive with 35%. So that makes him a stronger contender when he comes back. His defense buff has went up from 10 to 15, and his defense buff duration has went down from 5 turns to 4 turns. So yeah, this one overall I think has kind of really had the guillotine applied to this one. This is going to be bad for this people that rely on him. You'll see how it affects him. I guarantee it. You're going to feel that one. Out of all the ability changes I've seen so far, I think people that use the blue Jon Snow are going to feel this way worse than any of the other characters. That's just my suspicion on that one. Sansa Stark has always been a protector, a tactician, and a survivor, but now her strength extends beyond simply cleansing wounds. She prevents them before they take hold. These changes reinforce her anti-bleed role while making her a stronger Stark support champion in most situations. With stronger buffs, she ensures her allies stand firmer in battle. She now leverages a much improved renew both in her skill and her passive. So she's now a battle cleric, basically. Her new passive makes her a powerful ice champion when faced with heavy debuffing foes. So when you fight somebody that does a lot of debuffs, maybe this is the one to put in your party now. I don't know. We'll see. She no longer removes bleed or ice. That's kind of... that'll be difficult to see how that works. But bleed has never really been effective enough to where it mattered to me how to remove it, because usually I've got the team that I'm facing dead before that ever comes into play too much. So I don't really think that was ever really a thing for most of us. A new effect grants 1 renew with a 75% and 100 at a max chance of a bonus renew. So that sounds pretty interesting. So yeah, she may be a little better now. The new passive, when an ally is debuffed, Sansa applies ice to the enemy responsible. She then grants her ally 25 and 40% tenacity and 1 renew. So it's going to be interesting to see how this renew changes things, because it's on a lot of the characters now. So it's an ability that's been added in mass on her, Caitlyn, and a lot of them. She has a new leader ability. Sansa is immune to bleed and heals all allies 10% and 15% at a max of her max HP when an enemy becomes brittle. This is kind of situational, so I don't think it's really going to have the effect that I think they hoped it would. It's still not going to be good enough to cause me to choose her over a Rhaenyra. Just not gonna happen. So it really doesn't do any good. It's too situational. Heal all allies when they become brittle. Well, what if you're not fighting a team that uses brittle? Then what? Her ability's just useless. So, yep. All right, so let's talk about my boy Ned Stark. Ned Stark has long been a master of many roles, but now his focus sharpens. He's no longer just a leader. He is the foundation of the Stark frontline, built to endure, protect, and command. I mean, that's pretty much what he was always in my mind. His healing now scales off of max HP, significantly increasing his durability and the ability to take one for his team. That's good, because that's what he was supposed to be, a taunter, a shield. That's what he was supposed to do this whole time, and he's hard to get through sometimes. So yeah, he did a good job, but it looks like he may be a little bit more difficult to get through now. His leader ability now has a 100% chance to apply ice, removing the variance and ensuring that he consistently brings the fear of winter to battle. His role is more defined. He's less of a generalist and more of a steadfast protector, making him a true anchor for Stark teams. I love this. Because in my mind, whenever I thought of Ned, I thought of the meat shield, the taunt. He's the taunter. He's the shield. He's the protector. His class was perfectly designed for him as a protector. His taunt duration went up from 3% at a start to 6% at a max to 6% overall. So now whenever he taunts, he's going to taunt for 6 turns regardless of what level his skills are. Wow. That's going to be big right there, because whenever somebody taunts, they're basically saying, hey, don't attack that over there, attack me only. And that causes your glass cannons and stuff to be able to survive longer when the heat is taken off of them and put onto him. So new effect, while Ned is taunting, he has a 50% at the start and 75% chance at max to apply ice to his attacker. So I don't know if that means every single turn or just randomly while he's attacking, like halfway in or something like that. I don't know. That's interesting. If that's every single turn for those 6 turns that he's taunting, that's going to be huge. That could be really big, depending on how much ice he applies. If he does a 50% or 75% chance to apply ice every single turn, every time you match gems, that's a turn, and he has a chance to apply ice every single turn, wow, that could be big. His new passive, when an enemy becomes brittle, Ned gains 25% physical resistance for 4 turns and heals the team for 5%, or at a max 7.5% of his max HP, which is quite a bit, so that's a decent heal. Ned heals himself when he takes critical damage. So anytime somebody does a crit, Ned heals, which makes him even stronger and harder to get through. So I love it. I love it. I like the changes to Ned so far because they're more in line with what I envision Ned as when I think of Ned. As the leader ability, his ice potential went down from 2 to 1, and granted that's because he's now applying ice every time he taunts. So his ice chance went from 35% to 100% with his one skill. It knows that he is going to put it on. So instead of there being a 35% chance to apply 2 each time, now you get a solid 100% chance of getting 1. So in the overall average, I think it works out better like that, because you know that you're going to have that 1 ice every single time, and now all you got to do is get 4 more. So that's pretty cool. Jory Cassell, he's had some updates. Not really somebody that I've ever really used, so I'm not really sure if he's any good or not, or if he could be good. I don't know. I'm just going to have to kind of pass on him because I'm not really familiar with him, so I don't really want to talk about something that I know nothing about, and I haven't used Jory at all. He's at level 1 for me and have not put him in a single battle. The Lord of Bones was once an unpredictable force, but his power was too unreliable to truly strike fear into his enemies. With these changes, he commands the battlefield with greater consistency and relentless hunger for victory. His ice application is a far more reliable asset to Stark teams, and his damage output has been refined. A new passive heals him when enemies fall, ensuring he thrives in the chaos. His leadership ability dodges debuffs is stronger and lasts longer, weakening the enemy's defenses over an extended period of time. So I think he used to apply ice whenever somebody was defeated. Now he gets a heal when an enemy is defeated. So this is one of the reasons why I never thought that Lord of Bones was good in a dragon team, because he had that ability that he applied ice when people were defeated. So when you only have one enemy, that really doesn't do you any good. So that was kind of a stunting effect on that skill, and versus having him in a legendary assault party. So that's why one of the main reasons why I think that you never really saw a lot of Lord of Bones in legendary assault parties. Now for raids, different story. He's a pretty decent choice for that Stark Ice team. The Northern Brawler once was a bit too overwhelming for a common champion. You think? Oh man, Northern Brawler. Oh my god. I don't know if you guys remember about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, I made a video about the 3 or 4 heroes that I absolutely hate to fight, that I absolutely hate to see in the enemy party. And if I see them in the enemy party, I'm kind of sometimes, depending on what the other makeup is, I might skip them on account of these people. Northern Brawler was one of those. He could stun you. He could do a ton of ice. He was really good for a common character. So I think he was probably one of the best common rank characters there is in the game. So it looks like they've kind of tweaked him a little bit. To bring balance, we've redefined his strengths, ensuring that he retains his control-based playstyle with stun and reliable ice, but without overpowering his peers. Yeah, he was really... he was a controller. He would stun you and then ice you, and then you're stunned and you can't go, and it was very annoying. His stamina speed is slower, but in return his damage significantly increased, and now he strikes twice instead of 4 times, making his hits more focused and impactful. His new passive effect also makes him an excellent enabler for heavy hitter. So here we go again with the nerf to stamina regen fill speed. He was a fast, and that was one of the reasons that he was so good, because he could hit you so quick, and then before you knew it, half your party was stunned, and you had ice flying around all over the place. Everybody taking ice here, take some ice there, take some ice everywhere. Now he's a normal, so that stunts him a little bit. His damage, however, was greatly increased. So now that he does get to strike, he hits a lot harder, even though he hits less. So this is going to be one that's interesting to watch, whether people move away from using him. I am going to predict that a lot of people will move away from using him, because this right here is a nail in the coffin to a lot of the heroes. When you slow them down, you cause people to not want to use them anymore. So if you want to get people to quit using a character, just slow their speed down. That's the #1 way to do it, because everything in this game is centered around speed. How fast can you kill your opponent before they can kill you? So if you keep slowing people down, the end result is that people are going to use them less. It doesn't matter how much more damage they do when they actually get to hit, because by the time they get to hit, everybody's dead. So, that's not always such a good trade-off, a speed reduction for a damage increase. If you can't never go till the end of the battle and everybody on your team is dead, then it hasn't really done you a lot of good. And that's my thinking on it. I don't know. You may disagree. You may like that big hit later on in the battle, but for me, I want to hit hard and fast. I want to hit fast. I want to get off the ground running. It's one of the reasons why I like my AoE team so much, is because I charge my AoE team up fast. He's not part of it, but, that's what I'm saying. His passive stun duration has went from 2 to 3 at a max to 2. Not really. This is too many negatives. There's 1 positive and 2 negatives there, and I don't know that that's going to work. When an enemy becomes brittle, reduce their defense by 10% for 2 turns. Just not that big of a deal. So it's not really, I can't really see that as a bonus, because that doesn't really do very good. Ravenous Bone Collector. Once a chaotic spreader of ice, the Bone Collector now wields his power more precisely and reliably. He may apply less ice overall, but what he does apply will stick more often, ensuring his chilling presence is felt. His skill damage is significantly increased, and ice application is more controlled, making his attacks more punishing. His passive attack debuff is now stronger and lasts longer, weakening enemies more effectively over time. He's somebody that, a lot of people do use. He's a good addition to an ice team. If you're short on Starks or something like that, he's a great throw in. He's a good character. He's just not somebody I've ever used because I've had better teams, better slot options. Best in slot options I've had, and my roster has always been pretty deep, so I haven't had to worry about going down to his level to fill a hole. So I never really got a lot of use out of him, but I can see where a lot of people do because I face him a lot in raids teams. Woodland Archer, I face this one a lot in raids teams too because she's cheap and she hits hard. So it's easy to star her up, and she hits hard. But the trade-off is she dies fast. It's like a hot knife going through butter. So, that's how your trade-off is. But she can do a lot of damage. So she definitely is somebody that a lot of people are going to look at. And now even more so because her damage has been increased. Her ice capability goes down though, and her chance to apply ice has went up. So while she does less now, she does it more reliably. So I don't know. Her stealth duration has went down from 3 at a minimum, 4 at a max to just 3. And while she's in stealth, her skill reduces enemy stamina by 10%. So add that in with the Stark faction bonus already, and that could make her a little bit more attractive as a hero slot to use. The Greyjoys and Triarchy. So this encompasses Kraghas Durahar. He's not somebody that I've ever thought was good. I just don't like him, and I just don't think he really has a place in just about any team. Maybe these new ability buffs will help him be better, but that's just something we'll have to see. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on him. Euron Greyjoy. He's always thrived on chaos and overwhelming force. Now his rework cements him as a master of combos and sustained pressure. His faster skill, when used as a follow-up, will seriously hinder the enemy team. His new passive extends crowd control efforts, and his new leader ability allows for combos to keep rolling onto the new targets. So this one actually got buffed in his stamina regen speed from normal to fast, so that makes him hit a lot quicker. So it stands to reason that he might actually be a lot more attractive now as a hero slot option. So I don't really know a lot about the Greyjoys because I've never really used the Greyjoys, but I know that there are some people that do like them a lot, so hopefully that helps them out with them. Yara, she got some buffs as well. She got an increase to her damage. If her passive is below, she will attack enemies, and she has a new leader ability. When Yara defeats a raided enemy, she stuns a random foe for 2 turns and remove 1 debuff from ally. I mean, this is great that they're trying to add some leadership abilities to people, but it's too conditional when she defeats a raided enemy. I mean, how often are you going to fight people that are going to have the raided on them? I mean, I know that the Greyjoy faction was going to add raided to them, so this could be good. If their ability to add rated is quite common, then this could be really good because she may be the next Northern Brawler that has your team stunned all the time, and then you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting for 2 or 3 turns to go by so that you can actually move. We'll see. That's going to be interesting. Then we go on to Theon, and his rework is interesting because it says right off the bat his main weakness that people have had with him from the start. His rework ensures he's a powerful starter champion. That's the problem. He's never really been good at early teams until you get him worked up quite a ways. Then he becomes really good. But a lot of people can't put that amount of work into him to get him to that point. So that's what's caused a lot of people to just shy away and not use him, even though he can fill the dual role of both a Stark and a Greyjoy. That's cool, but he, like I said, he's so hard to use early game that it makes him unattractable, for most people. Unattractive for most people. The Ironborn Berserker, never really used that, but he gets damage start buff, but then overall nerf. Damage on low HP removed, and his accuracy has went from a little bit less at the start to more at the finish. His passive is an accuracy buff, and yeah, he does a lot of damage if you can get him to hit, and that's the problem. The Ironborn Scout, he's now a true initiator, making the enemy team start every battle vulnerable to the Greyjoy onslaught. So the Greyjoy synergy looks like it's been made more effective looking. Now, how that works in actual play testing, I'm not sure. And then we go on into some more of the triarchy type skills. I've never really used a lot of the triarchy characters, so this is kind of just stuff that I'm really unfamiliar with. You can go into more detail with these later when you read them. So I'm just going to kind of skip on down a little bit because this video is already too long. I didn't want it to be this long, but there's just so much to talk about, and I can't really break it up into multiple videos because it's kind of all related together. So we're going to skip through the triarchy stuff, as that's not really something I don't think a lot of people are too interested in, and they may be after they've changed it. I don't know. We're just going to have to kind of see where that shakes out. So non-faction champions, they did say that they made some changes to some of the non-faction changes. Rhaegal was meant to be a late game terror, but once he finally joined the fight, he wasn't quite the force of destruction we envisioned. These changes massively increase his damage output and ensure that when he awakens, he has the tools to finish the battle. So yeah, the dragons, I really want to see the dragons become more useful, and I think that based on some of the stuff that I've seen behind the scenes, I think that that will happen later, but it looks like they are going to go ahead and start to work on making those heroes more viable, because I mean the dragons are like the main thing in the the lore. They really needed to be good, and they've kind of fell short on those. Caraxes is a good example. The Bloodworm has always had a unique role as a hazard destroyer, but his sluggish speed and inconsistency made him an unreliable choice for battles where his skills should have shined. With these changes, he is now faster, stronger, and more dependable, ensuring that when he takes flight, the battlefield is his to command. So they have increased his speed from very slow to fast. Wow, that's a big change. I am actually going to try to play with him some now, but I'll have to put some silver into him because I've got him at like 5 or 6 stars, but I've never put any levels, a single level into him, because I knew how bad he was in his current iteration. So yeah, I'm going to have to check that one out for sure. I'm very interested to see what people can do with Caraxes now, and especially being he's fast. That's a big change from very slow to fast. Wow, that's a big change. Plus his damage got a substantial buff, 33% at the start to 75, and then 81 at the max to 100 at a max. Chance to destroy hazards was a random chance from 50 to 75, and now it's a 100% chance. Hazards destroyed 1 to 4 at a max has been flatlined at 2, and then some other changes on him. They had a bug fix. His Red Dragon Gem now works correctly. All right. So he's definitely going to be something that I'm interested to see what people do with. Marjorie Tyrell, the improvements to Renew made Marjorie too potent in her role. Rather than simply reducing her power, we've leaned into making her healing more consistent and sustainable, allowing her to support her allies with reliable, long-lasting recovery. We've reduced her burst healing to compensate. Okay, well, that'll be interesting to see as well how this new Renew mechanic works on her. So she's going to be one to watch, probably. Well, although they did admit that that made her too potent with the Renew, so maybe she's not going to be as strong as she might seem with that healing role. Knight of the Vale, Braavosi Daggermaster, Lazarine Chieftain, and Lazarine Gladiator, Merciless Gold Cloak, Stonecrow Mender. These are all the factionless heroes that they're talking about that they did some changes to. Stonecrow Shaman, Tanner's Row Murderer, the Poisoner, Volantis Assassin, Wildling Spearwife, and then that was kind of the list of the factionless heroes that they made some changes to. So those will be interesting to see how they really shape up now with the current iteration where the game is. It definitely needed some work. So because they didn't have a faction bonus to rely on, that kind of made them really weak, you know, just in the general, the overall picture. So it's good to see them put some love into them. So they had some bug fixes as well, and I haven't really seen any of these yet, so I'm not really sure what we're going to find in here, but let's look. The Alliance fixes prevented the player invite dialog from breaking after performing the action on it. Fixed broken edit buttons in the Alliance create edit dialog. Search settings for alliances are now remembered when previewing alliances within the search results. That's cool. Alliance Legendary Assault. Oh my gosh, they finally, thank gosh, they finally fixed this. Alliance Legendary Assault. Fixed damage numbers on the bosses appearing off screen. Thank you so much. This is one of those things that frustrated me to no end because I could not see how much damage my team was doing, so it's so hard to know whether or not you had a good makeup or not. But now you can see the damage. That is, yes, golf clap on that one. Thank you so much. Champions and enemy fixes. Fixed Aemon Targaryen's hit point stat upgrades which weren't applying. Ooh, that makes him a lot stronger. Improved the scaling of how some legendary champions' ability factor into their might. Expect this improvement to roll out more champions in the releases to come. Fixed Kristen Cole the Kingmaker's leader ability not always working. That'll make Bassmaster happy. He's all in on his Kristen Cole. Updated Beric Dondarrion's passive ability to properly reflect the effects of his revive. Updated Servant of the Drowned. Fixed Ironborn Berserker. And event fixes. Fixed Caraxes Champion created unintentional voids in the puzzle board in the Battle of the Bastards. I've seen that happen multiple times. Fixed boss intros not skipping when autoplay is on. Resolved an issue where champions had a maximum amount of debuffs. Gear fixes. Haha, we had somebody in our Discord, I think his name was No Name, was the user ID that he went by. He was talking to us about this marksman gear that was incorrectly labeled as Hunter class, and it should have been the Peerless subclass, and he couldn't find the gear in game anywhere, and he dug through our whole gear library that we had and still could not find it. Well, he finally got them to correct this, and I know that he's probably happy about that. So good job for No Name, our user that got this to their attention and had them fixed. So now people with marksmen that are the Peerless subclass will be a lot happier because now they can get a full complement of gear on those players. Fixed an issue where the wrong amount of XP was needed for upgrading gear to some levels while sacrificing, so that's cool. I know that's been a thing for a long time. Crown's challenge fixes fixed a level where Thoros of Myr would sometimes revive enemies in a way that caused them to overlap. Stronghold fixes fixed an issue where some players would get stuck on the farmland tutorial. Okay. Summoning fixes fixed summon pack event information dialog button to stay up to date at all times. That's cool. Maybe that'll stop some of the misrepresented summon information that we see a lot of times. Trials fixes fixed stuttering and legendary trials level selection, fixed incorrect suggested might values displaying on some trials, and that's it. So folks, there are so many changes in this. Look at that. It goes on for like 5 miles. I can't believe we got through it actually. in a little over an hour and 15 minutes, but that's release 1.0.293 patch notes. Thank you so much for going through this with me. I realize that there is so much more that we could have went into more detail about, but the video was already so long as it was that I just can't allow it to go on any further because I've already lost most of you guys, I'm sure by now. But there's so much in this that you need to dig in, see how it affects the people that you use, see how it affects the teams that you use, and then get out there on the Discords, mine or the official Discord, and start posting your thoughts about all these changes so we can start to really tear it apart and see how this is all going to shake out with our heroes that we love to use. So are the changes good? Are the changes bad? I don't know. You tell me. So in the comments of this video, let's talk about it. If you've seen anything in here that you know is going to be a problem, or if you feel it when you actually get the update, how the skills have changed for the good or for the worse, then put the comments in the video and let's talk about it. So I'll talk to you soon. I got another banger coming up right behind this one. It's going to be something you won't want to miss. My boy, the Digital Gandalf, is messaging me right now while I've been making this video. You've been hearing my phone going dun, 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 dun. He's telling me, gotta get this out, gotta get this out. So I'm gonna go make that. So I'll talk to you soon. Peace.